My name is Freya, and I am 27 years old. I never imagined my life would turn into something that sounds like a headline. But this is exactly what happened. My parents sold my grandma's antique piano, the one she left, only to me, and used the $95,000 to buy my sister a car. When I told Grandma from her hospice bed, she picked up her phone, made one call, and said, "It's time for them to meet my attorney." It all began on an evening that felt painfully normal. I had just stepped into my apartment after a long shift, my feet aching, my mind already drifting toward Grandma and the piano I grew up with, when my mother called. Her voice was light, rushed, almost rehearsed. And before I could even ask how Grandma was doing, she said, "We finally took care of that piano." The words didn't land right away. Took care of it sounded vague, harmless even, until my heart started pounding and I asked what she meant. There was a pause, just a second too long, and then she said they sold it. Sold it. The antique piano that sat in Grandma's living room for decades. The one she taught me to play on. The one she told me again and again would be mine someday. My hands started shaking as I asked how much. $95,000, my mother said, almost proudly, like it was an achievement. I remember staring at the wall as she explained, without apology, that they used the money to buy my sister a new car because she needed it more. And you're doing fine on your own. Every memory I had of Grandma's hands, guiding mine over the keys, came crashing down at once. That piano wasn't just furniture or money. It was the one thing Grandma made clear was meant for me. Written into her will, spoken aloud in front of witnesses, repeated so often it felt unbreakable. I told my parents they had no right, that Grandma was still alive, that the piano wasn't theirs to touch. My father cut in then, his tone sharp, telling me I was being dramatic and ungrateful, reminding me how much they'd done for me growing up. That hurt more than I expected, because I had spent my life trying not to be a burden, trying to be the easy daughter while my sister always needed rescuing. I hung up the phone feeling sick, my chest tight, knowing there was only one person I needed to tell, and dreading it at the same time. Grandma was in hospice by then, her body fragile but her mind still sharp, and every visit felt precious and heavy. When I sat beside her bed and told her what my parents had done, I tried to soften it, but the truth spilled out anyway. I told her they sold the piano, told her the amount, told her they gave every dollar to my sister. I expected tears or exhaustion, maybe sadness. Instead, I watched her eyes change. The tired haze lifted, replaced by a calm, steely focus I recognized from my childhood. The look she had when someone crossed a line. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply asked me to hand her the phone. I remember thinking she might call my parents, to yell at them, to beg, to explain. Instead, she dialed a number from memory, her fingers steady despite everything. And when someone answered, she said clearly, "It's time for them to meet my attorney." Hearing those words sent a chill through me. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a piano anymore. It was about respect, promises, and the mistake my parents made thinking Grandma was too weak to fight back. I left the hospice that night knowing something irreversible had been set in motion, something far bigger than family arguments or favoritism, and I also knew my parents had no idea what was coming next. If you want to hear how Grandma's one call changed everything and what happened when my parents were finally forced to face the consequences, the days after Grandma made that call felt unreal, like the world was holding its breath. I visited her every afternoon, half expecting her strength to fade, but instead she seemed calmer, almost lighter, as if setting things in motion had lifted a weight off her chest. She didn't talk much about the attorney or the details, only told me that promises mattered, and that people shouldn't mistake kindness for weakness. A week later, my parents called me again, and this time there was no cheer in my mother's voice. She sounded panicked. She said they'd received a formal letter from Grandma's attorney, outlining exactly what they had done wrong: selling property that did not belong to them, violating a living will, and misusing funds that were explicitly designated for me. The piano wasn't just sentimental. It was legally mine the moment Grandma put it in writing years ago. The attorney demanded full restitution of the $95,000, plus additional damages, or the matter would go to court. My father took the phone then, angry and defensive, accusing me of turning Grandma against them, as if a dying woman didn't have her own mind. I told him quietly that I hadn't turned anyone against anyone. I had simply told the truth. That's when he hung up. The fallout came fast. My sister, who had been proudly driving around in her new car, suddenly stopped posting photos. Within days, the car was gone. I later learned my parents forced her to return it to the dealership at a loss, scrambling to recover as much money as they could. It wasn't enough. Grandma's attorney pushed forward, filing paperwork that froze my parents' accounts until the full amount was repaid. Family gatherings turned into shouting matches without me even being present. Relatives who had always stayed neutral started asking questions, and for the first time, my parents' version of events didn't control the narrative. When the attorney arranged a meeting, Grandma insisted on attending virtually from her hospice bed. I sat beside her, holding her hand, as my parents appeared on the screen, pale and stiff. Grandma spoke slowly but clearly. She reminded them that she raised them to respect boundaries, that she had been explicit about the piano, and that choosing one child over another was not love. It was convenience. She told them she was disappointed, not because of the money, but because they thought she wouldn't notice or care. By the end of that meeting, my parents agreed to everything. They would repay the full amount, cover the legal costs, and formally acknowledge in writing that the piano and any compensation tied to it belonged to me. When the call ended, Grandma squeezed my hand and smiled, a small, satisfied smile I will never forget. A month later, the funds were transferred into an account set up in my name. It felt strange seeing that number, knowing it represented an object that could never be replaced. The piano itself was gone forever, sold to a private collector overseas. But Grandma told me something that stayed with me. They can take wood and strings, but they can't take what it gave you. A few weeks after that, Grandma passed peacefully in her sleep. At her memorial, my parents barely spoke to me. My sister avoided my eyes. It hurt, but it also felt honest. For once, everything was out in the open. I used part of the money to establish a small scholarship in Grandma's name for young musicians who couldn't afford lessons. Something she had always talked about but never had the chance to do. The rest I saved, knowing she would want me to build a future, not dwell in anger. Sometimes, late at night, I still imagine the sound of that piano, the way the low notes vibrated through the floor, the way Grandma would hum along when I played. And every time I think about how close my parents came to getting away with it, I remember that line she spoke so calmly from her hospice bed. The words that changed everything. My parents sold my grandma's antique piano, the one she left, only to me, and used the $95,000 to buy my sister a car. When I told Grandma from her hospice bed, she picked up her phone, made one call, and said, "It's time for them to meet my attorney." That one call wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity, justice, and a woman making sure her voice was heard until the very end.